What's up, knife freaks, sharpness geeks, and purveyors of stabby goodness? Welcome to the Knife Freak Show. My name's Jonathan McNees. It's my co-host, Mr. Chase Boatright.
Oh yeah, Macho Man Randy Savage. Don't make a big mistake. Hi.
I wondered where that was going.
Yeah.
I like it. Yeah, I feel like I maybe channel a little bit of the old Macho Man pretty
Oh yeah,
regular.
you're definitely more Macho Man than me, or you're trending on Ultimate Warrior sometimes. But yeah.
There you go. Well, that's more my that's my age showing, I guess. So
I
um,
still like Macho Man, so it's all good.
there you go. You
All
don't
right.
worry about it. I
How
thought
you
maybe the
doing?
glasses were because you were trying to be a little incognito and disassociate yourself from me because I saw a comment on, I think it was last week's video, how
Yeah.
they didn't like my political views, so you should distance yourself from me. So,
Yeah.
you know,
I just
there's
chose
that.
to ignore that one, but that's
Hey, their prerogative. That's fine. They
yeah.
don't want to be a customer because they don't. Hey, you can't ever say that you don't know where I stand on things. So
Yeah.
that's that's the way I feel about it. So
Yep.
anyway, what you got going on?
Whole lot. We've been working on finishing up some fixed blades, and then I really got to kick it into high gear on some folders and stuff because Blade Show is 55 days away. And I was doing real good, and then all of a sudden I got distracted with doing fixed blade stuff to kind of keep money rolling in and stuff, and then all of a sudden we're halfway through April, and I don't even know how that happened. So, but yeah,
Yep.
been doing them, finishing up some fixed blades, about to send some to River's Edge, about to post a few on my website that I've been kind of hinting on my stories lately. And yeah,
Nice.
then after that, I'm just going to be pedal to the metal, trying to finish every folder I can for Blade Show. So
Yeah.
I know you've been,
Yeah. That good old,
what?
I was just gonna say a good old balancing act between, getting ready for a show and keeping the bills paid in the meantime.
Yeah,
That's
that it used
that's
to be
fun.
a lot easier whenever, it was a two income household, where my wife was working as well. And, now she's, not saying it's not work, but, she's watching our daughter and, staying at home with her.
Full
So,
time mom. Yeah.
yeah. So that's not a job I could do, I don't think. So yeah, definitely work. But,
Definitely not.
yeah,
I definitely couldn't.
it
Yeah.
does
That makes it
definitely,
tough.
it changes the dynamic for leading up to shows because I could kind of, change up pay structure and stuff like that, and not quite, kind of skimp on some things here and there and make it to Blade Show.
Yeah.
But now it's like, got to keep the money rolling
Bills
in
have got to be
regardless.
paid. That's
Yeah.
right.
So
Yep. It definitely adds an extra level of complexity and stress to it. So
yeah,
I was always very blessed with that Amy was always, worked a good full time job while that was what a lot of what helped us be able to put so much of the money back into the business and stuff because we were,
yeah,
it, it helps a lot. It's tough, man. It's tough for to work any job. And like these days, like
yeah,
one income is tough. It just is like,
yeah.
just the
Especially
world we
a
live in.
small
So,
business, sort of, one man
right, for sure.
operation situation. But
Yep, for sure.
yeah.
But,
Sorry, where you going? Or no?
yeah,
All
no, I
right.
just trailed
Yeah.
off there.
All right. Well, I know you've been seeing some Dixons getting out there lately. Saw a few actually out in
Yeah.
the wild, it seems. So what you
Yep,
been?
I'm pretty excited about that. Yeah, we've sent a few out for some pass arounds and stuff like that.
Okay.
So still got a couple more I think that haven't landed yet. But yeah, we're trying to do a better job. I've always been really bad at I really like surprises. So I've always been really bad about like coming out with something new and like it's done and ready to go, whatever. And I'm like, surprise, we got a new model or whatever, and like not taking time to try to build it up and hype it up beforehand and
Yeah.
pacing myself that and not being willing to like as soon as we'd have gotten some done, I've been wanting to drop them so that we could, you know, hurry up and get them out there or whatever and not be patient enough to actually send them out for pass arounds and stuff like that. So trying to be a little smarter on the marketing side of things with this. So So yeah, we've got some getting out there. We've got some set back for a first drop. I'm just, to be honest, the only thing I'm waiting on to do the drop, and it's a small drop compared to what I feel like we would like to have, but
Yeah.
we're we're still waiting on. So I just break it completely down for you and for the listeners, so that you kind of know and get a little behind the scenes of, and know that we're not just intentionally like slow rolling stuff or whatever. So to do the when we started the new model, so I had blanks cut for blades and for handles, and
Mhm.
so I needed to actually get some done and proofed out before we ordered too many blanks, on the chance that we actually needed to change the blanks
Yeah.
themselves. There wasn't a
Yeah.
too likely that we would have to do that, but there's always a chance that you could have to change something about the way you're making the actual blanks. So I didn't want to buy up, hundreds of, blanks, have them cut up, and then decide they weren't going to work and we need to change them. So
Yeah.
we cut up a fairly small amount and proofed out the handles, and then uh, proofed out the blades the best we could as far as the fit up and everything. And then, so then we kind of got rolling on handles pretty good. We actually got way more handles than blades right now. But then, as I've mentioned multiple times on the show, we started doing the grinding on the blades in house, and it's
Hmm.
actual grinding, and they're going to be hollow ground, and you can see from the ones that've been being posted that the grinds look different than on the Mac 2s or anything else that we've done. They've got the plunge looks different and everything. I'm very, very pleased with the way the grinds are coming out on these. But same deal, we got enough. We're grinding them after they're hardened, so we got enough blanks done and hardened to proof out the grinding. And thankfully, it didn't take the entire batch to proof out the grinding. We didn't use up too many in the proofing out process, so we had some left over, which is what
Yeah.
basically this first batch is going to be. So we finished those out, in good blades. And so, once had to get that proofed out before I could pull the trigger and buy more blanks. Because again, on the off chance that I didn't want to have hundreds or thousands of blanks sitting here that I couldn't use.
Yeah.
So,
I
uh,
mean, talking about that,
uh,
sort of thing we talked about early in the podcast of like, scrap basically, making
yeah,
mistakes and having to pay for all those
right,
mistakes and like, try
right.
to make mistakes
And
in
I've,
small batches, not big batches.
yep. And I have,
So,
I've learned the hard way, because I've always been way over optimistic, and just like, okay, yep, we've got this. Let's get a bunch of blanks going. We're going to be running on these another week, and we'll be off and going. And then something happens, and you know, we've either got something we've got to figure out how to make it work that's less than ideal,
yeah.
or it's scrap, and it just causes problems. So
Yeah.
tried to tried to rein myself in on this batch, and which I did. Feel like I did a pretty good job, but said now we're waiting on Blaze to get back from heat treat. We should be have some in hopefully tomorrow. Uh, we weren't sure the grinding wheels that we're using. We're having to kind of test that out and figure out which ones are going to work the best. Some of the ones I ordered, the one I ordered initially, I didn't realize it when I ordered, but it had a 40 working day lead time on it.
Mm.
So it's actually just now fixing to get here, and we used some other wheels in the meantime to start with. And anyway, so I'm still testing out wheels, waiting on them to get here and more wheels to get here. So anyway, we should be, hopefully this week we'll be back up and running, grinding some more. So my plan is to, hopefully, we're going to for sure do the first small batch drop within the next 2 weeks. And then I'd like to do one more small drop before Blade, but we'll just have to see how it goes, because I want to take a good supply of them to Blade show. So it just kind of depends on how, when we get up and running with the blade grinding again, it'll just kind of depend on how well it goes. So
Yeah.
we'll for sure do at least one small drop before Blade, and then hopefully, either way, I plan on having a nice supply of them for Blade show.
Good.
So
Okay.
yeah, that's kind of where we're at with everything. I'm very happy with them, with the way they're coming out. We've just been, like I said, we got it's been the proofing out process and trying not to get out, too far ahead of ourselves to the point that we made a mistake, or had to eat a bunch of scrap parts. So
Yeah.
it's
I
just
was kind of confused, when I saw them, like other people out there posting them at first. And then I was like, well, I guess, I didn't know if you had done a small drop of them or what was going on. So,
yeah, no,
but
we're just trickling a few out for some pass arounds and stuff, and and trying to get some exposure out there, trying to be a little smarter about the marketing side of it. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
And that
they're coming.
that was something like when, I first started working for you and you always talked about like, wanting to wait too much for surprises and stuff that like I'm not a big fan of surprises, but also I find myself being guilty of that as well because I don't want to post something until it's like done or at least close to done and, kind of looks like something. I don't want to just post parts most of the time.
Right.
And so I kind of fall victim to that too, where I don't want to show things too early, but I probably should
Yeah.
just go ahead and, you know,
Yeah.
throw some stuff out there, but
Yeah,
I
especially
don't.
if it's something new, different, whatever. But also, I think
Yeah.
for us, I think part of it is also a some a lack of confidence to some extent because and not kind of not wanting to jinx it, a little superstitious because you don't want to put a
Yeah.
project out there and then be like, yeah, it's coming or whatever, or start hinting at it too soon and then hit you know, some major roadblock or just totally mess it up and scrap it or whatever. So it's like, yeah,
Yeah.
it can be a little bit, you got to have enough confidence that it's actually going to make it to a finished product. But hey, people understand, and if it doesn't, then that gives you a good story to tell. Like, hey guys, this was what I had planned. Didn't work, screwed this up, or this didn't go right, and so we'll try it again, or I'm never trying that again, depending.
Yeah.
So you know, it's we probably should not be afraid to show it either way, unless you're just really superstitious and don't want to jinx it. But yeah, I'm trying to grow and learn on all of this stuff, and so I figured this we better do a better job on the marketing on this instead of just trying to kind of fast track the word of mouth. Basically,
Yeah.
we depend very 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 heavily, and I say we, I mean all of us in this industry. We depend very heavily on word of mouth. You know,
Yeah.
that's what now when I say that, I mean that includes Instagram, Facebook, whatever, it doesn't have to be face to face, but word of mouth is our
Yeah.
biggest method of getting the spreading the word about our product, especially since we're very limited on running ads and that kind of stuff. Like it's that's very important. And on that note, I will say I got to throw a thank you out there. I don't want to throw out individual names because I'd leave somebody out of it, but we have several of our uh, followers on Instagram that are really good about posting. They'll repost nearly everything that I post. Like they repost it
Mm.
in their story or whatever, which is great. And I've actually, I've mentioned that several times in the past and asked people to do that. And just want you guys to know it's greatly appreciated. And those of you that maybe haven't thought about doing that, if you can just take the time real quick, and I'm not just talking about for us again, I'm talking about whatever brand that you want to support, it helps us a lot if you
Yeah.
just just simply those couple of clicks it takes to just hit the little button and hit share to your story or whatever. Like it's literally I think 3 clicks to do it. It takes almost no time, gives you content for your page, for your story or whatever, which is I mean most of us wouldn't mind having more followers and stuff like that. So all it does is gives you more content, for your stuff too. So like it's kind of a win-win. And
Yeah.
I can tell you for us, we really appreciate it when you guys do that. So um for anybody that you want to support, that's always a good idea. So just keep that in mind. We greatly appreciate it.
Yeah. Yeah. I always appreciate it when people repost my stuff and, or just post my stuff in general. And, it
Right.
still, makes me a little giddy inside, but,
Yep.
you know,
Yep.
so
It's cool. I don't think you guys realize how much it actually means to us and affects us when we do see you guys reposting our stuff and all. Like it's a big deal. Like
mm,
it really is. Like we get a thrill out of every single one. So it's important and we really do appreciate it. And I probably don't say it enough, but you guys, we do for sure appreciate it.
yeah, definitely. All right.
I believe you mentioned, well, you said, I know you talked about you had River's Edge and stuff going on. You just
Yep.
posted a fixed blade. I'm sorry, I don't know the names of all of them. Uh, you just posted a fixed blade that it looked like maybe it had a hand rubbed blade. It was a little bit bigger
Oh,
fixed
it was
blade.
actually a satin tumbled blade. It was a Moraine L
Okay.
that had. black Westinghouse canvas. Actually, it was real Westinghouse, but it's just black canvas. Micarta,
Mhm.
and then it had shoot, what's that stuff called? True Stone, I think, is what that inlay sort of spacer material
Yeah,
was. But yeah,
right.
that's one of the ones I'll be posting up for sale on my website here soon. So
I
yeah,
like that one. Yeah, I like
thank you.
that one a lot. I like the finish. I wondered what it because I couldn't tell totally from the video or whatever, but I didn't really think it was hand rubbed, but I could tell it was some kind of satin. So yeah, it caught my eye.
Yeah,
It looked really good.
thank you. Yeah, I don't know. It on the video, it looks way, in person, you can see a lot more of the grind lines and stuff. It's just more of a tumbled satiny finish, but it, like on the video, I don't know if it was the overcast or whatever, but it looked real. I I didn't realize it till I posted the video that it looked like that. But yeah,
Yeah,
I
looked
do
good.
like how that one came out. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, that's man, it's so hard to get good pictures of, especially on the shiny finishes and stuff, whether it's blades or like on folders, like some of the satin finishes we've been doing on the handles and stuff, or like the two tone with the
Yeah,
satin flats and stuff. Man, like it's
yeah,
like if I could, that's one reason I like. We're trying to like take a bunch of those to the shows and stuff because like they you cannot get the full effect of them from even on people that take really good pictures, and my pictures are not that great, so it is very difficult to get the full impression of them versus in person. Like it's just really cool. But we need, like I
yeah.
said, blades or handles. But yeah,
Yeah, it's all
so
trying to find the right lighting where it's not, completely dark and looks like it's just, nothing. And then, but still trying to get a little bit of shininess, but not too much shininess where it's just glaring into the camera. And like,
right.
yeah, it's tough.
And I know that you do this too. I've always tried to not necessarily. I want to make the knife look good, but I
Hmm.
want to make sure it's an actual representation of the way it looks in person. Like I don't. I'm not
Yes.
just going for making it look as good as possible because I
Hmm.
want the person that ends up getting the knife or whatever, or that's attracted to that knife to be. I want it to be genuine. I don't want it to be because I had really good. Which it's not that much of an issue for me because I don't have great photography or editing skills, but I don't want to, you know what I mean? I don't want it to be over edited or whatever. Like the editing
Yeah.
that I do is basically to try to show the way it actually looks in person, not to try to
Yeah.
necessarily make it look the the best that I can in that actual picture or whatever. So
Yeah.
that's always kind of a fine line to walk.
Yeah, I very much try to do the same thing. I want to get like you said, just an accurate representation because I mean, most of our business is online. So we're, selling a picture and I don't want whenever they get the picture, whenever they get the knife in hand, I don't want them to, you know, be deceived or feel deceived about like what they got.
Right. Yeah,
So
for sure.
yeah, definitely one of those things that's difficult as far as the making side is trying to learn how to take pictures and do all that, which, I had no idea how to do until, you kind of gave me some tips and tricks and that definitely brought my
I
knife
need to
picture
learn a
taking
whole
game
lot
up.
more myself or just
As
hire a
do I.
photographer. Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be
That's
nice too.
really what I need to do in the not too
Yeah.
distant future. Yeah. But
All right.
anyway, I believe you mentioned that you maybe had us a freak of the week this week.
I do. Bringing back the freak of the week this week for somebody who really inspires me in terms of like he does. Well, I probably should just go ahead and say it. Um, this week's freak of the week is Garcia Bladeworks or Alex Garcia at Garcia Bladeworks is his Instagram handle, and he does just a he does a lot of fixed blades that are sort of small, sort of EDC fixed blades. So right in my wheelhouse. Does a lot of clip points, a lot of Warncliffe type blades. Um, does a variety of materials and finishes, and all of them look as good as the last. Like he does, just his belt satin finish looks incredible. His, hand rub finish looks incredible. And then he uses a whole lot of different materials that are really good. And also,
Looking at it.
he makes simple knives look good. And he also has started making folders. And right out of the gate, like his first frame lock looked like he had been doing it for 10 years. Just a
I
really,
see it right here.
yeah, that's his first folder. And I was like, oh, yeah, well, good for you.
Maintenance tech, dude. Yeah.
Yeah.
You
But I
made it
mean,
look too easy.
no,
Yeah,
yeah, he
looks
really
great.
did. But no, his stuff is incredible every time I see it, and just he's one of those. I mean, I've talked to him a few times, I think here and there, just like, "Hey man, that looks cool," or he'll comment on one of my things, say, "Hey man, that looks cool," but never talked to him
Yeah,
that much. But I've always admired his work for, I mean, as long as I've been on Instagram, I think. But yeah, so y'all
yeah,
go check him out. It's at Garcia Blade Works um, on Instagram. So yeah,
yeah. They look really good. I wasn't familiar with him, but those look really nice. So
yeah,
I like
it's
that.
just they're always clean. They're always every single one looks as good as the last, and that's
Yeah,
all you can really ask for. So
yeah, yep.
yeah,
That something you mentioned there kind of made me think. Isn't it kind of funny? Like, I don't know. It's kind of weird, like how acquaintances nowadays are like, you know, well, they commented on my picture, or I commented on their picture, or whatever,
yeah,
like, and you feel like you kind of know people and get to know them, and literally just from like kind of commenting back and forth on, and then some. I mean, there's been lots of people that I've end up in full blown relationships with that in person, that mostly it shows obviously. So,
yeah,
but like it's really cool that you can. It can also be a little deceiving. Like, you sometimes kind of feel like you know people better than better than you do, or whatever. Which has never
yeah,
been. I've never had a problem out of that. You know what I mean? I've never had somebody that, like, oh well, I thought this was a cool dude. Turned out he's a serial killer. But not that I know of yet, anyway. So
yeah,
if any
yeah,
of you that I've been talking to are, don't tell me. But
yeah,
I don't want to know. I don't think, just as long as you don't come after me. But anyway, yeah. But it is. It's just kind of, and again, that might be my age showing that, like, the knowing the world pre-internet, it's just kind of weird to be like, how you kind of know people that you've commented back and forth a couple of times on you. But like I said, I mean,
yeah.
I've
I mean,
tons of
yeah,
people that I've know that I quote unquote know now, but that's how it got started. So
yeah, and I'm sure, like, even back to your forum days, like there was people that you interacted with and talked to on there that
oh
may
yeah,
have never even met in person, but like you
oh for
kind
sure,
of kind of get to know them, and it's like a weird thing, weird social
yeah,
construct. But yeah, I mean, he's
yeah,
up in New York, and I'm obviously down here in Alabama. I don't think we've ever met and even been in the same
right,
room, but he's
yeah.
been a
Unless you
nice
get a
guy to
chance to
me,
both
and
go to a show,
yeah,
yeah,
and
oh yeah,
yeah,
I've had tons of people that are like that.
yeah,
Customers and other makers and everything else. It's pretty cool. It
yeah,
opens our worlds are a lot more opened up, a lot bigger in a lot of respects because
yeah,
of it. So
for sure.
it's pretty
So
cool.
yeah,
I think in a lot of ways, there's definitely some negatives to social media and stuff in general, but
yeah,
there's also a lot of positives. I mean, it just kind of
yeah,
depends on, uh, you just kind of have to filter, you know, you can, you got to filter out the stuff that can drag you down the negative side of stuff, and just, you know,
yeah,
focus on the positive stuff. And I think it ends up being a net positive for sure.
yeah. It definitely can be harder to turn the other cheek, as it were, and kind of when there's a lot more negative out there, but there's definitely a whole lot of positive out there too. But yeah,
Yeah, for sure.
so
It just,
with that, think we're gonna move into questions. But yeah, y'all definitely go check out Alex's work. Does great work, and yeah, seems to be just absolutely killing it on every level. So, but first question is a little bit of housekeeping, I guess. um, had a question somewhere. I cannot seem to find where the actual question was. I don't know if it was in a DM or an email or a comment, but someone wanted to know how to pronounce your last name, and I will let you handle that because, yeah, I'm guilty of saying it both ways. So,
well, I'll be honest with you. I think I say it more than way sometimes. So, so the southern drawl in me says it McNees or McNees. It's technically the correct way to say it would be McNees. But McNees, whatever. It's not knees, like, you know,
I believe that
a
was part
joint
of the
in.
question was like
Yeah,
knees. I
yeah,
think that also gets
yeah,
conflated because of the McBees,
yeah,
McNees,
yeah.
McBees. I think that was how I first said it because like
Right.
but yeah, it's
Associate it
not.
with that. Yeah,
Yeah, it's not knees, it's niece. Like
yeah, yeah.
they're
Like
j-
geese. McNeese. Yeah.
yeah, okay, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, there you go.
Yeah. All right.
That's if you want to say it with a southern drawl, you get bonus points.
For sure. All right. So into the real questions. Got a few more from Andy. He's been very helpful with our emails lately, or active in our emails lately. He says, "Is there an actual purpose for speed holes, weight reduction, or something else, or is it mainly just a decorative pattern?" And I would say both. That's really it's a way to weight relief while also doing something besides just having you know doing internal weight relief, milling or anything like that. And especially for like custom guys that don't have a CNC mill or anything like that. It's a way to kind of decorate it and also make it lighter at the same time. So
Yeah. I, I'm assuming, I do not know the history of it, but I'm assuming that that's where the name speed holes come from, is because it's lighter. So, like if you were thinking in terms of like a car or some sort
yeah,
of vehicle, lighter, so it would be faster. So the speed, I don't know the actual history of it, but I just, reasoning tells me that that's where it got its name. So
yeah,
yeah, I'm for sure both. It can definitely serve both. It's you know in reality it's not you know the amount of weight most of them are reducing is not you know it's not that much, but it
yeah,
can be. It depends how big you make the holes and all that, how much you chamfer them and or counterbore them or whatever you do. But yeah, it for sure can act as both. It's I'd say I do it now typically is more of a it's more of an aesthetic thing, but yeah,
yeah,
you're right for sure. Back in the custom days, before I had as good of easy a way of making weight relief pockets that looked good, it was definitely helped with a way to reduce weight and still look okay. So
yeah.
yeah.
Which I'm still in the middle of my first. It's actually not my first knife with speed holes. I remembered I made one previously that was kind of
Mm,
just a one off that I think I only did the speed holes on the show side and I just kind of did a random pattern. But now I'm actually
yeah.
doing one that's like, trying to space them all in like even increments and kind of do them along an arc.
Fun, isn't it?
And yeah, that's,
Yep.
I think I've made
Well, and
3 show scales because I screwed up 2 not
yep.
spacing them correctly. The drill bit walked a little bit and now all of a sudden this hole's slightly higher and all that work just out the window. Great.
It's tricky because if you it's a bit better easier with a visual aid, but like if you most knives aren't perfectly straight,
Hmm.
you're not usually doing like the top of the knife and the bottom of the knife handle being perfectly parallel with each other. They're not straight. They usually have some curve to them, and
Yeah.
so what's actually like so you would think you would want to put them along the center line, but the
Hmm.
center you put them along the center line on a lot of them, and it actually does not actually look right. It doesn't
Yeah.
look good, and then you get stuff like
Usually,
finger choil and stuff coming in at the bottom, and it can throw the eye off. And
yeah.
it it it's always been more of just a visual thing for me. Like I just basically start it where I like say the first hole up close to the pivot where I think it looks good, and
Yeah.
then figure out the spacing, and then figure out kind of the and I don't think I've ever, or at least not always, been able to necessarily keep them in an exact arc either. Sometimes it's just a little bit of a, you know, almost like a, now that I'm doing it in CAD, it's a little bit different, but like before it would be, I would literally be doing it with like a set of calipers or like,
Yeah.
is it not like, well, the measuring calipers or like, I'm talking about the old school, um, maybe they're not called calipers, like
Oh, you're talking
a,
about the compass,
like a
right?
compass. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's got
Yeah.
like the 2 points. Yeah, it's got 2 points
Yeah.
and the,
Yeah.
joint at the top and then 2 points. Yeah. So
Yeah.
using that to basically um get the equal distance and then putting them, top to bottom where it looked good so that they looked like they were in line but still flowing with the handle or whatever. So yeah, there's
Mhm.
definitely some kind of an art to it to me that,
Yeah.
to get it to look right. But
For sure. It's definitely more difficult than it would, than you would think at first. Oh, you just drill some holes, and but then trying to make it actually look good, and like I'm doing it on a cove, not this cove, but trying to like
right.
put them on that curve sort of. But like these first
Uh-huh.
few are kind of just straight to kind of go along in line with the spine, but then they kind of drop off here, and so it's like
Uh-huh.
kind of a weird
Yep.
thing, but
Yep.
yeah. So
And quick tip on you're talking about your drill walking, spot
mm,
drill them first,
yes,
and then take that extra step to spot drill them, and that should mostly eliminate you drill walking on you.
yeah. I don't. I think what happened was is like I had center punched where I was going to go, and I was going in to spot drill them, and I think I had like whenever I was center punching, I center punched one a little high, and I had two little divots,
Caught the
and
wrong dimple.
it
Yeah,
caught the wrong one. Yeah, so
I got you.
uh,
Yeah, and
I don't know. I screwed it up. That's mainly what happened, but
it's easy to do.
it is.
It's easy to do.
All right.
What
So
else you got?
also from Andy, he says, "Can you show us some of your past slash older models that we might not have seen? Can you talk about your design philosophy for why you made them at that way at the time? And are there any specific things you would change based on that, based on what you know or like now?" So that is a very in-depth question, but I
Yeah, that's
mean,
pretty good.
most of my models that I have come out with, I've still kind of make. I mean, they've mainly just evolved over time to, like what you see now are my current preferences and, things like that. But I don't know. I like the first folder I made was this. That is the Fjord, and it's the only knife I've made so far that was only folder I've made that was purely a flipper. Um, it's very difficult to do this camera thing. Got a lot more respect
Yeah.
for the YouTubers after this, but uh, it's evolved over time. If you saw the one that I took to Blade Show Texas, it looks a little different than this. Just
Mm,
both in focus, um, both in execution and in overall profile. So I mean, those little things happen after you make the first one. Like that this was the second knife I ever made, and it also there's a lot of things that it didn't turn out like the way I wanted it to, like the way the drawing was. So like the blade to handle ratio is way off, and a couple things that like I didn't know when I first started. Like I just profiled the blade, I profiled the handles, and then put them together. I didn't know, like a lot of people will put folders together, a lot of custom guys will put folders together and profile them together, that way everything's smooth and stuff. But like there's a little bit of a bump right there because I didn't do that. I didn't profile them together. And so like there's a bunch of little things like that that just kind of evolve over time as you evolve your skills. um and yeah, that's I guess my answer. And the other
yeah.
older model was the original version of the Cove, which is the prototype. This is the only knife I ever made without like, or only folder I ever made without CAD first. I just drew it,
Mm.
and for some reason, like a psychopath, just went out there and made it with just a paper drawing that I had made a
That's the way
copy
to
of.
do it in a lot of ways.
Especially
I know
with a
hundreds
with a
like
folder
that.
that's yeah, like trying to get. I just kind of guessed on the pivot and stop pin placement, and I was pretty close. The only
Mm-hmm.
thing is the detent track shows a little bit. I profiled the front of the handle back a little too much, but I
Yeah,
mean, I think it would have worked if I didn't, profile it back as much. But yeah, so
yeah,
minor miracle that worked. But um, mainly it's not design philosophy. I think that's changed over time. Sometimes there are some things that change. I mean, I think especially for a longer amount of time, like you've talked about, like with your closed position, obsession and
right.
stuff. But and sometimes I think there's philosophy changes, but for me so far I hadn't really, it's not the philosophy, it's more the execution that I'm changing up these days and trying to do
Yeah,
different stuff like that. So that's my long-winded
yeah.
answer. What do you think?
Like you said, some of that stuff changes as your skills evolve, and
Yeah.
then sometimes as your skills evolve, it opens up the door to do stuff that you may not have necessarily even imagined doing before. Like it can actually change your design philosophy somewhat, just because we tend to think, at least, maybe not everybody, but a lot of us tend to think inside a box, and the box of what we can, especially once you start making a couple, like
Yeah.
at least for me, I tend to start thinking inside the box of what's doable. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Like instead of just drawing something up and, and then trying to figure out how to make it all, like you start thinking about in the beginning, you kind of do that because you just don't know. But
Yeah.
then once you start making a few, then you're like, okay, like I have to do this way and this that way because you're constrained by your technical abilities. So as
Yeah.
your technical abilities grow and you get more stuff under your belt, then a lot of times that opens up more design options for you because you now know how to do stuff that you didn't know how to do, and so you start thinking in a different way.
Hmm.
So and that applies all the way up to like you know going from a handmade guy to a CNC guy.
Oh
Like
yeah.
it for sure. Like that's a huge leap in changing design philosophy and stuff because now you've got options to do stuff that you couldn't have dreamed of doing, or at least not nearly as easily. There's guys
Yeah.
out there with handmade equipment and stuff, with the right stuff can do ungodly, crazy good things. But
Yeah.
it definitely it changes as you go along for sure as your skill set improves. So
Yeah.
um for me, the examples I brought were this was the very first come on now. Here we go. Very first folder design, which was the F muck, which I
Mm.
still like. Now, this is actually not, if you saw some of the ones I made towards the end of me making customs, looks quite a bit different than this. The overall profile looks similar, but the scales on this one are basically flat, just with kind of rounded edges. And they were, in the end, they were very heavily contoured. And that's the
Yeah.
skill thing. I was not comfortable removing that much material and doing the contouring early on when I was doing this. And so things were flatter and stuff. And now, towards the end, stuff got, and I'll show you on the next example, stuff was way more, most stuff. I mean, it kind of depended on the knife. So, like
Yeah.
the Killer Bee, it wasn't, it wasn't meant to be contoured and rounded like that. So it stayed
Yeah.
kind of flat. But for this stuff, so anyway, so that, and then you can very much tell from this. Well, it's not as obvious, I guess, just because that blade is so freaking chunky and wide. But the blade to handle ratio lengthwise is way off on this from pretty much anything I do now. And I don't know if I could find a way to make it different now without making just basically completely making it into a whole nother knife. But
Yeah.
if I was going to make a change to it, obviously, again, this is an early example, so it didn't have the contoured handles, but based on the ones that I was doing towards the end there that had contoured handles, I liked pretty much everything about them except for the blade to handle ratio. If I could find a way to tweak that, I would probably change that. But again, I'm not sure how much I could change it without completely changing the profile of the knife. So
Yeah.
yeah, and you can see like look how pitiful that like that's not hold on camera like that clip is not basically not even a clip. Like there's no again, I wasn't comfortable with like, dealing with thick enough material to actually remove enough material to make it like functional. This should have been just a bent clip or whatever. But that's my attempt, probably my first attempt at like a 3D clip. I'm sorry,
Hmm.
I'm doing horrible at the camera, but yeah, it's just awful. The clip. I mean, it's not even functional at all. But I just left it on here because it's for historical reasons or whatever. I will say I do like the Hamon on this. This one
Yeah. Pretty
adds
sick
a
of
lot
home.
of what if you guys have heard me talk about it. If you're not familiar, this is a lot of the kind of stuff that I used to do
Hmm.
for quite a while on fixed blades and folders. But anyway, so moving on from that one, this was I had several designs there kind of towards the end that were kind of like not a flash in the pan, but like I made a few of them where wasn't ever totally happy with them. They didn't really stick or whatever. They were technically models I made, but they weren't really. I didn't make a lot of them, mainly because I just never was totally thrilled with them and stuff. But this is one I actually did make quite a few of for a while there, and this is the Skybolt.
Hmm.
So just a straight up flipper. This one has a much higher flipper tab than I think as I got further along in them, the flipper tabs shrank if I remember right.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I Most of the ones I've ever seen have a much smaller flipper tab than that. But
TLC. Yeah. Like I said, this again, just I think I was still pretty early on in flippers on this one too, and
Yeah.
so I wasn't comfortable. Obviously the bigger the tab, the easier it is to make it flip. So I wasn't comfortable enough. My clips did improve. Move my hand. Still, I wouldn't call that a good clip, and it's not. You can see it's not even touching, but compared to the one on that F Muck, it was way better. But you can
Yeah.
see the contoured handles. You can see the evolution, how I went from those flat handles on that original F Muck to the contoured handles on these, which are very reminiscent of the way the Dixons are now that we're
Yeah.
producing. So this one started to get some better. There's still things that are not right in the closed position as far as based on my design philosophy now, where the spine comes down right here should
Mm.
be lining up more of the tip up here. And then, again, this is based on my design philosophy. I'm not saying it's right or wrong.
Yeah.
Um, the spine here would have now, if I were designing it, it would meet up with this point right here. So just some little stuff like that. Um, but yeah, so that's the Skybolt. There's quite a few of those out there in the wild that you can find pictures of and stuff. It looks like I need to take a little bit of flits to this one. It's got some
Yeah.
stains on it. But yeah. So, and this is I don't remember what the blade length on it. I think it's at least 4 inches. Depends on if you count that giant choil or not. But
Which
it's
I don't
this
think
was a
most
big
of them
knife.
had. Most of them didn't
That
have
big of
that
a choil.
big finger tool. Yeah.
No, I don't think so. Again,
Yeah.
that was probably one. Who knows why I did it that way? I don't know if I messed something up or if I was just I think at the time I was kind of going for like being able to choke up on it like that,
Yeah.
which I, in retrospect, I don't really know why you would need to do that. But anyway, so yeah, that's a couple examples of I really meant to bring the Dixon prototype that I had, so you can see the difference in it. But it was a lot like the F Muck. It's basically flat, just slightly rounded edges. Again, before I got comfortable, it was in between. I think that was the second folder design that I did that at least that kind of stuck. I think it may have been the second one. Period. Trying to remember for sure, but anyway, it was definitely second or third,
Yeah. That's
and
that's what you've
so it
told me at
evolved
least
quite a bit.
a few
Yeah,
times is
yeah.
that it
I'm
was
I'm
the
pretty sure it was the second one. Yeah,
yeah.
I'm pretty sure that it was. I wish I'd have done a better job of documenting everything, but um, you know,
Yeah.
too late now.
Yeah.
So um, but
But
yeah, uh, overall, my like you said, my design philosophy hasn't. It's changed some. Like I said, the blade with the F Muck, and actually, the full story on the F Muck is I made a fixed blade. The first fixed blade that I started making was just a very generic wide blade little fixed blade that I called the Muck for just McNees utility knife. And so then the F Muck was a folding McNees utility knife. I was basically just trying to take my first fixed blade design and make a folder out of it. And
yeah.
so that's kind of how that came about. And again, I wasn't super conscious at the time of the blade to handle ratio stuff, and that's evolved for sure. Doing more contoured handles and stuff. That it wasn't necessarily that I didn't want it designed like that in the begin with. That was more the whole like confidence in my skills thing, and I didn't, I wasn't confident because like on those custom F mucks, the ones that were contoured heavily, like that was a lot of material I was removing. Like it was a lot of contouring, so I just did not, I was very early on at doing any kind of working with titanium and stuff at all, and so everything I was doing, I was kind of timid with it and
Yeah.
just wasn't going for it like I should have. So yeah, as I learned, it evolved, and so yeah, that and like you said, the closed position is probably one of the other biggest things. The blade to handle ratio and closed positions are probably two of the biggest things that have evolved for me over the years. So
Yeah. I mean, and to be fair, that's probably, for me as well, especially, working in your shop, I focus a lot on blade to handle ratio. I always kind of did, but I think it's even more front of mind now.
yeah,
There's a lot of things like, just a lot of little things that kind of get tweaked along the way as far as the designs and stuff, but I don't know of any, grand sweeping changes for, my particular philosophy at this point. But
right,
also, Andy,
yeah,
if I mentioned this a few episodes back, but a good resource to go and see like a lot of the older models and see a bunch of examples of them is Arizona Custom Knives, and you can go to Like Jonathan has is like a page. They've got like a you go through this big selection of makers and go find his name and go way back in the archives because they basically keep everything up as far as I know, as far as listings. So anything that's
Yeah,
ever
that's super handy.
been on that site, like whether someone sold it to them secondhand or they bought it from Jonathan firsthand or whatever, like they're all still up there, and so you can go back and see a bunch of old stuff that way. So
Yeah, I'm actually really glad they do that.
yeah,
I hope they don't ever change that because it's nice to have kind of a library of. I
yeah,
should probably start going through there and like screenshot and stuff, whatever, in case they do ever take it away.
yeah.
But
Which I know some other dealers do that too. Like I know Vince at Fort Henry used to do a lot of that. Like a lot of the old listings were still up and stuff. So I mean, they're out there if you want to see them. So
yeah, yep.
okay, all right. I think that was it for the questions this week. Um,
Okay.
Not sure if we've still got any more in the queue or not. I'll have to check and get up to date with the email, but let Andy carry us through this time. So,
Yep. Thanks, Andy.
yep, appreciate it. And
On
appreciate
that
all
note,
your.
guys, please do submit questions,
Mhm.
suggestions, ideas, whatever, like stuff that you want to hear us talk about. So, um, whatever it may be, the pet peeve stuff was fun.
Mm.
Um, I try to not get on here and rant every time about something that's you know that I don't like. So try to kind of keep it positive, but you guys let us know what you want to hear. So and if you want to hear more of the positive stuff, we'll try to stick more with that. But we definitely appreciate the questions and suggestions, and we may start doing a little getting in the comments a little bit too. We'll see. Like going and kind of just reviewing some of the comments and talking about them. That would be think that could be fun too on some of them. So guys, come on with the comments too on YouTube specifically.
Yeah,
I may be asking for something I don't want. We may get a little spicy here, but it'd be all right.
yeah,
We ain't afraid of a little spice.
yeah. But that
So
email is knifefreakshow@gmail.com with one S, knifefreakshow at gmail.com. Like I said, Blade Show Atlanta is only 55 days away. We will both be exhibiting there, and I will be at table 15B, and Jonathan will be at.
it was 424. I wrote it down. Technically, it's 424
And
or 426. I think I'm just call it 424. I
okay,
don't know how you're supposed to do that. So
I
yeah,
don't know.
booth 424, 426, whatever you can find on the map, right across from Microtech. So
Yeah, I
looking
was
forward
testing you
to it.
that time.
Yep, I was ready this time.
Yeah, I think I'm
I
gonna.
actually had it written.
Yeah, at
I
some
was going to
point
say I
I'm
had it
gonna.
written down because all right, here we're sorry.
Yep,
Go
yeah.
ahead.
Thank you for writing that. No, I'm gonna they released the maps and stuff here recently. They sent them out via email, and I'm gonna circle both of our locations and do some actual computer stuff and put our names above the things and draw a map to where
Oh,
we
cool.
are, and
Yeah,
post that at
that'd
some
be
point.
cool.
So yeah,
Yeah, for sure.
um,
And that just got me thinking we need to get some more stickers ready for the show, and we need to talk a little bit more about possible swag and stuff like that. But for sure, at the very least, we'll for sure have some stickers for the show. So
yep,
make sure you come by and grab some of those. And we greatly appreciate, like we were talking about earlier, about spreading the word and helping repost and stuff, guys. We really appreciate it. We'd love to start to get our numbers on the podcast stuff up a little bit. So appreciate if you would help share that out for us. Share it with somebody if you're being entertained by it in some way, whether it's laughing at us because we're so goofy or whatever it may be. If it's worth listening to on some level, then please let somebody know to check it out and see. And we're gonna try to start including some more educational stuff on here too, as far as maybe some technical stuff. So make
yep,
sure that you hit us up with questions like that too, of stuff that you want to know some of the behind the scenes of the technical side of stuff. I like getting into that stuff too. So and that can
yeah,
be on the technical stuff as far as how the knives are made. It can also be technical on the business side of stuff, and how we approach certain things. So by
yep.
all means, let us know what you're interested in on that. So
All right.
yeah, and on the note of Blade Show coming up, like we just did Blade Show Texas, so I'm sure as we get a little closer to Atlanta, we'll kind of do a quick little, maybe not a full blown like etiquette thing like we did before, because that's kind of getting redundant, but we'll for sure start talking about it more and more. But guys,
Yeah.
I said it, one of the last couple of shows, like for real, you guys, if at all possible, and if it's not this year, then you need to plan on doing it soon. Like Blade Show Atlanta is like the show, like that's the mecca. That's the grail
Mhm.
show of all shows to go to. So if you can
Yes.
make it, I highly recommend that you come to Blaze Show Atlanta. I don't think there's any chance that you'll be disappointed. Overwhelmed for sure. Disappointed, I don't think there's any chance. Now you might be disappointed that you don't get a particular knife that you're after or something, but if you
Yeah.
come at it just to enjoy the show overall, I do not think you'll be disappointed. Like you'll get a chance to meet tons of people, makers and other collectors and stuff. Man, there's
Yeah.
been some lifelong friendships forged at Blade Show. It happens
Yep.
every year, and you get a chance to see and handle the knives in person, and kind of like we were talking about earlier about you get to see whether uh, the pictures and stuff that are being posted are actually true to what it looks like in person, see what it feels like,
Mhm.
and you may be pleasantly surprised that something's way better than you think it is. You may also be unpleasantly surprised that something in person is not nearly as good as you think it is. So that's the best way I mean, you can invest the money and come into the show and check out multiple knives from multiple makers and kind of get an idea of where you want to focus your collection, or you can take a chance and buy a knife here, a knife there from different makers and get them, and then if you're disappointed, then you've invested money that you know then you're disappointed. So it's
Yep.
kind of a way to test the waters with a whole bunch of stuff. You can go kick a whole bunch of tires before and enjoy doing it with a minimal investment, and then that can help you really kind of focus in on where you want your collection to be. So
For sure. Yeah.
that's you know
I've got to
and
handle a ton of knives at blade shows that I've never would have got the chance to handle otherwise. Even at Texas, I saw a guy carrying David Mosier. I recognized the clip in his pocket, and I was like, "Hey, is that a Mosier?" And I'm behind the table, and I'm like, "Can I touch it?" you know,
yeah.
I mean, I didn't say it like that, but I probably should have.
If I was doing the editing, you would be in trouble because I'd make that clip into something bad for you.
yeah. Well, good thing I'm doing the editing. And
Yeah,
on that
lucky for
note,
you.
yeah. On that note, I think we should wrap it up before we completely go off the rails here. So, you got
Yep,
anything else?
yep. So Blade Show Atlanta, be there or lose your knife freak card. Just kidding. It's at some point you do need to get there.
For sure.
No, I think that's it, guys. We do greatly appreciate you. Please help us spread the word and give us a follow and a subscription and all that good stuff. And we'll see you next week.
Oh, yeah. Let your freak flag fly.